But this portion of scripture, no greater love than he would lay down his life for his friends. Are you willing to lay down your life for the people that you just gathered in a circle with? With your time, with your talents, with your treasure? Are you willing to lay down those things so someone else could have those things? Are you willing to lay it down for the person that is behind the mask, that sits a couple rows in front of you? That's a hard question. That is a big responsibility. And Jesus says these in John 15:16, as we just focus here on what it means to be fruitful. You did not choose me, but I chose you. As fruit doesn't last. You ever make banana bread? What do you got to do? Leave it rot. Fruit doesn't last. Banana bread, it's made from rotten bananas. We let them mold. You leave an orange. We found an orange in our pantry a couple weeks ago. It wasn't even the color orange. It was a mold ball of penicillin. Like it was a breakthrough in science, but it was in our pantry. Fruit does not last. We know this. So how do we produce fruit that lasts? How do we at Summit measure that kind of fruit? How do I, as a minister, as a bridge pastor, measure the kind of fruit I'm making? How do we as a church look in the mirror and see how we're doing? There's a couple ways to do this. There's a couple ways that churches do this. The first way or model is to be successful. There's nothing wrong with being successful. In fact, I've said this before. If you're watching any of the Minnesota Wild hockey players that live in the vicinity of here that go to the XL, we're cheering from you. You're successful hockey players. You can come here and be successful. Followers of Christ. We could care less that you play hockey. But you are going to have to bring some sticks and teach me how to skate. But the point is this. It's okay to be successful, right? But see, this is the pitfall of this. The pitfall of looking at success as the measure of how we're doing as a church is birthed in individualism, or the individualistic society that we're lived in. Nobody lives like we do. We're increasingly becoming more individualistic, and we're buying the lie that we can do it on our own. So even in the way that we construct our homes, you can see individualism being held in a form of idolatry. Almost to the point where when we hear words of communism or like communal living or social justice or socialism, we hear those words and we are so violently, viscerally reacting to those words. And part of those things are toxic ideas that destroy people's lives. And part of it is because we want to live our own life and have convinced we can do it on our own. It's like we show up with the remote. And this church better be attractive, doggone it. And we pick out churches like we look at restaurants. You know that people, when they're looking at like a church to attend, will Google Summit Church and they'll look at the ratings. And if we got 4 stars, 5 stars, I give 20/20 1 star in some ways, but 5 stars in other. Like the rating system. That's how people look at churches, experiences. The individual's opinion of that place matters rather than the corporate unity of that space. This is the danger of this model of being quote unquote successful, because you can have an individual consumer in the audience and then you can have an individual pastor up front here. You can have somebody who's able to create a great individual experience for people, draw a large crowd, and the church can be successful because the individual leading individuals is attractive and it's successful. The knee-jerk reaction to back up to that is this word right here, to be faithful. Now, we just want to grow in sound doctrine, grow in godly character. We want to grow in our, faithfulness to pastoring people. And I look at that as like a lot of people that just want to show up to church with a shovel. Now, you can show up to church with a remote and just be successful with the ways, or we've got to show up to church with a shovel and be faithful with the work. And this shovel or this faithfulness has got its pitfalls too. It's the pitfall of competence. Being faithful isn't enough. You can be faithful as a heart surgeon, but not be competent in the actual mechanics of operating on people, and your faithfulness will only get people so far. There's a good chance they're going to die on the table. Does that make sense? Heart surgeons have to be competent and faithful to the craft. Charles Spurgeon, heart surgeon Spurgeon. If you're trying to remember a part of this message, just think heart surgeons, Charles Spurgeon. Charles Spurgeon writes this, I love this. Certain good men appeal to me who are distinguished by an enormous passion and zeal and a conspicuous absence of brains. Where's their competence? People would talk forever upon nothing, who would thump the Bible and get nothing out of it. All earnest, awfully earnest, mountains of labor and the most painful kind, but nothing comes from it at all. Therefore, I've usually declined their applications to this ministry college. So when we're looking at how we're doing, or how am I doing, or how are the ministries doing, or how, like the litmus test as a church of how we're doing, we could look at success, or we can swing the pendulum the other way and be faithful. But what did Jesus say? What is the metaphor that Jesus used? What's the measure he says? John 15, 16 through 17. I chose you, appointed you that you would go out and bear fruit that would last, fruit that would abide. The Greek word here is meno. It's continue, it's to endure, it's to last, it's to be always present. So I command you to love one another. In Romans 1:3, Paul talks about having fruit among you. His prayer for the church is that fruit would be there. Galatians 5:22, the fruit of the Spirit that is there. This godly character in 1 Corinthians 3:9. There is this fruit metaphor that takes way of us being God's field. Farmers certainly know this. Farmers understand the value of fruitfulness, because to be a successful farmer, you have to be a competent farmer to be a fruitful farmer. Farmers can go out and till the soil and work the land, but if they don't have the competence to do that correctly, the land will never produce fruit. We can have all the knowledge and have all the competence, but not the faithfulness to actually pick up the shovel, and nothing's going to grow either. So the beautiful marriage of success and of faithfulness Jesus uses is fruitfulness. So church, here is how we measure how we're doing. We have to be fruitful, because competence and success is found in fruitfulness. It's the ways, the remote, with the work, the shovel, based upon the word. The word, the work, and the ways leads us to being what Jesus asks us to be, and that is fruitful. Do you want to be fruitful? That's how we will measure this, to be fruitful. Well, there's a number of ways we can talk about that as a church, how to do that. But Jesus says to love each other. And then he says not just to love each other, but to love as I have loved you. And the measure, the bar of that love is that you would be willing to lay down your life for your friends. And then, whatever we ask, God, he'll do. Be fruitful, church. Don't be faithful. Don't seek success. Be a fruitful body. Be a fruitful people. How? Love each other. How much? Willing to die for one another. And then you're going to see God do some amazing things at this church. He's done it before. And he can certainly do it again.